So in the view layer, let's start with our storyboard. Okay, so I've got a collection view here in the upper left, and that takes up the most space on the view of all of the views. I have a toolbar here, and then I have another view over here. If you look at the running project, notice this gray line. It's kind of hard to point to it exactly, but there's a gray line between the tan and the white. That gray line is there because I have put my table view inside of a border view. And so let's pop that open. So here's my table view. It's inside of a border view. And the table view says, hey, I want to match the top, the bottom, and the right, but also I want to be offset 1 point from the left-hand side. Let me edit this and show you what I mean. So here's, say, 50. Okay? That's what it looks like if I make that constraint 50. But if I make it 1, I just get a thin little gray line. And that gives me a nice, pleasing border between the tan and the white. And that's why I call it border view. And that constraint right here, it's currently set to 201, so 200 for the table view plus 1 for the border. And that is the constraint that I'm going to animate when I hide my table view. The rest of the auto layout constraints are pretty straightforward. So these are just pinned to the top left, top of the toolbar, and then to that border view. And the border view is also pinned to the top right and top of the toolbar. And then the toolbar is pinned to the left, right, and the bottom. Okay, the other thing to say about the view here, the storyboard, is that I have two different types of cells. I have, because remember I showed you Salt Lake doesn't have a subtitle, and most of the temples do have subtitles. And so if you go look at these cells, you'll see on the attributes inspector that the style is either subtitle or, in this case, basic. But in both cases, I'm using one of the built-in types. I don't need to customize the table view cell type. We did need to customize the collection view cell type because I need an outlet to that custom view that I'm creating. And so let's see, anything else that's important to say about this? I think that's the storyboard. In class I showed you we created a new launch screen, and we did it here in the iPhone X style, but it works the same for these other phone styles as well. Okay, anyway, so that's our launch screen storyboard. And then here's the custom cell. Whoops, undo. Drag and drop. Okay, I was trying to widen this out just a little bit here. Okay. Anyway, here's my custom cell for the collection view that shows the link, the outlet to the temple photo view. And then the temple photo view class itself. Okay, so this is interesting. This is like the rook card demo, and so if you are comfortable with the rook card demo, this has all those same kinds of concepts. We have some constants that help us with drawing various things. We have some properties that we're capturing. And notice that I'm not saying let me store a temple in here. I'm storing the individual properties that I want, which might be a little different from what the temple has. And in fact, I cache an image reference here as well. And then my draw method is pretty straightforward. Just draw a temple photo. So you might say, well, why not just take the contents of draw temple photo, this method down here, and just plop it right up here and draw? Well, I could, but I'm wanting this to read really well, and it doesn't cost me much to call a function. So that's nice documentation. So first thing I'll do is draw the background. So we call this graphics subroutine here. And when we call a subroutine, often we'll want to push and pop the context. If we're going to change the graphics state, then we want to save it, and then we want to restore it when we're done. And so in this case, we're going to set the fill color, and we're going to set the stroke color. And because we're modifying the graphics context, I'm going to push and pop. And, it's only a one-liner, but again, this is kind of ungainly to read. UI graphics get current context, ? .save gstate or restore gstate. That's a lot easier for me to read push context, pop context. So I think that just cleans up the code. Okay, so this fills a white background, strokes a gray, very thin line around the outer edge there, and then we're done with draw background. Then we can say, well, let's go build a bounds. So we take the card bounds and then we inset it by border size, which is 5 points. So we're going to inset at 5 points, and that gives us a rectangle that lives inside the other rectangle. And if we can load a temple image, then ultimately we're going to draw that image in these bounds. This little calculation right here, it's a little more complicated than I'd really like, because in study mode I have these narrow temples that I want to represent a little wider. So like Guatemala City here, let's go show you that one. Okay, see, the text goes beyond the image, and if I were to snug this up to just the image, then I'd have to shrink the text to really display it well. And I thought it just looked nicer on a phone to widen the image to at least a square. So I'm going to insist on at least a square, and that's what this calculation right here is doing. It's just making sure that we have at least a square in study mode. Okay, and so we draw the, well, actually this is, sorry, maybe I misspoke a little bit here. What this is also saying, I need to center that image I'm going to draw inside of the square, and when I'm in study mode in that situation. Here's a call to just draw the image at the bounds we've calculated, and then we call another subroutine, graphic subroutine, to draw a title within that bounds as well. And this is a little bit more complicated. I won't walk through every line here because you've seen this stuff in the Rook demo. But again, push context, pop context to surround that, since this is a subroutine. Not strictly required, but it's good practice. And then we do all of the manipulations. So I ripped out most of the code for the large image view, and you can go back in the Git history and see that. But one of the things I did here was I said, look, if it's in large mode, if this is a large card, then we're going to show the dedication date. And so we do a little bit of modification of the text that we show. And we use that extension that I created on string to figure out, okay, give me a subtitle string and a subtitle shadow, a title string and a title shadow within this bounds that we've been given. And here's the font size I'm after, and bold, true or false. So, and then the one really interesting thing about this, besides drawing text, is how do we draw a rectangle that blends into the image behind it? And it's these two lines right here. So we're going to draw, we're going to set our fill to this blend white, which is a 0.7 measurement, and then alpha is blend alpha 1.0, and we're using that to set the fill. So you'd have to Google about this to see what's going on with blend mode here. But this is saying I want a fill that isn't just a solid opaque fill. I want to do something a little different. We're doing a blend instead of just an ordinary opaque fill. And then I'm going to correct here, which is the size of my text on the height dimension, and it's the width of that text bounds that we computed in the previous method that got passed in here. That rect that gets passed in. Anyway, and we say the blend mode that we want is multiply, and that's what's going to give us that screen over the image and the background to give us a consistent surface to draw against, so we get nice contrast. And then it's just drawing the attributed strings. Okay, so again, this is something that isn't probably the main point of this project, but it's another demonstration of custom views can be very helpful. I was able to really fine-tune the look of this thing in a nice, well-controlled way, but I had to pay the price of writing some code to do it. You could assemble pre-built widgets to do most of what I've just showed you here in the custom view, but I feel like I have more flexibility and tighter control by being able to specify it in code here. Okay, in the next part, I'll walk you through the view controller.